For years, everyone in Fairmont Crest had grown used to seeing her as nothing more than a quiet shadow lingering at the edge of the community, a woman who lived discreetly behind fences and half-drawn curtains, who never made noise, never went to parties, never joined clubs, and never once stepped openly into the simmering disputes that were the underlying rhythm of this gated neighborhood. People saw her in the supermarket, on the path along the park, sometimes glimpsed her in the church parking lot, always with a polite, composed posture, a slight nod of greeting, a social smile that never quite reached the depths of her eyes. Gradually, Fairmont Crest categorized her as one of the harmless ones, a background figure nobody bothered to look at more closely. They only knew her as Shanice's mother, the woman who often wore an old hat and preferred to stand in the background, leaving the spotlight to her daughter, never putting herself at the center of any story. Yet all of that turned out to be nothing but a thin layer of powder dusted over a completely different face, a portrait shaped from details no one had ever thought to piece together. When the layers of disguise began to peel away, the truth did not rise slowly to the surface as people might have imagined. It appeared with the same cold speed as a metal hospital door slamming shut, sending a heavy echo that silenced every other sound. The woman the community believed to be detached from chaos turned out to be the very person who had quietly controlled the currents of that chaos for years. She had once been the figure behind a secret network that existed quietly, like an underground system of veins running beneath the foundations of Fairmont Crest, a place where exchanges, debts, and purges were carried out in ways no one could easily trace. On the surface, everything was cloaked in civility, polite greetings, handshakes at homeowners' meetings, harmless cups of tea on someone's balcony in the late afternoon. Yet behind those courteous smiles lay an entire mechanism of calculation, in which every word, every nod, was weighed and stored as information to be used later. No one knew that in a small room behind her rundown house, she carefully preserved files on the residents of Fairmont Crest, like an archive of everything people tried to bury. There, debts were recorded in precise numbers, mistakes were summarized in brief yet piercing notes, DNA secrets were marked with her own private symbols, and the unspeakable was encoded into seemingly innocuous lines that, for outsiders, meant nothing, but for her, contained every detail she might one day need. Each file was a locked fragment of someone's life. Unpaid loans, clandestine affairs, quietly ordered DNA tests, statements edited before being signed, agreements made in moments of panic. Her world was not built from impulsive emotions, but from patient, meticulous coldness, like someone stacking boxes in a storage room, labeling and categorizing them. For most residents, Fairmont Crest was a stage for showy houses, glamorous parties, and carefully polished reputations. For her, it was a giant chessboard on which everyone had unknowingly become a piece she had annotated, strengths, weaknesses, and the hairline fractures they thought they had disguised. Each file was an invisible thread tying them to her, not by blood or friendship, but by the fragile, dangerous bond called secret. People believed she was merely an observer standing outside everything, but from that small room at the back of her old house, she had seen far more than they imagined, heard the sounds they thought the walls and curtains had swallowed, and recorded it all with a memory that knew no mercy. The sudden disappearance of several people who had once clashed with Shanice. Long explained away by neighbors through a string of convenient reasons like job transfers, divorces, and the need to get away for a while, turned out not to be the series of coincidences everyone had used to comfort themselves. In the shadows, before rumors had time to fully form, it was Shanice's mother who manipulated each step, pushing certain figures away from her daughter's orbit with methods no one could have guessed, not even Shanice herself. She never needed to raise her voice or appear directly in any confrontation, yet every move was arranged so that those who threatened or hurt Shanice found themselves facing obstacles, trouble, or consequences that forced them to leave Fairmont Crest. Everything unfolded slowly enough that no one could easily connect the dots, but fast enough that each of those people had to change direction. On the surface, all the community saw was names quietly removed from the resident list, houses changing hands without fanfare, hurried goodbyes. Behind those shifts were invisible touches, a well-timed phone call, a file accidentally exposed, an old secret suddenly recalled, a financial tie pulled tight until it shook someone's stability. The hidden notes she kept, those files Shanice had always assumed were nothing more than old papers, harmless records, suddenly became the key to decoding everything. In those pages, Shanice saw a dark world she had never imagined, a version of Fairmont Crest entirely different from the polished, luxurious image she thought she inhabited. Each line of writing seemed to glow under her gaze, connections to some of the most powerful figures in the community. Transactions that looked, on the surface, like simple favors, introductions, or advice, yet were documented in a way that revealed them as crucial links in a web of control, grudges settled quietly, not with gunfire or shouting, but with administrative decisions, threatening letters, and damning information leaking at exactly the right time. Every conflict that had flared up and then abruptly died down around her now seemed to have an explanation inside those pages, as if everything had been under one person's control from the very beginning. Shanice began to realize that those moments when she thought she was lucky to escape a fight, those times when an adversary suddenly backed down, apologized, or moved away, were never simply the universe's kindness. They were the endpoints of carefully arranged sequences, where her mother played the role of backstage director, exploiting the weaknesses listed in her files to tilt the outcome in her daughter's favor. She had not protected Shanice only with gentle advice or comforting embraces on nights when her daughter came home in tears, but also with cold, calculated moves that ensured anyone who threatened Shanice would pay a price. Within those calm lines of handwriting, Shanice could read an entire silent philosophy: if the world would not be fair to you, then I will rebalance it in my own way, even if that means others must disappear from your life forever. When the truth came out, Shanice felt as if she were suspended between two layers of air, unable to plant her feet firmly in any reality. On one side stood the gentle mother she had always known. The woman who brewed warm tea whenever she came home late, who listened patiently as she vented about work, friends, and difficult neighbors, and who ended every conversation with a soft touch on her shoulder, reminding her to sleep early, to look after her health, to stop overthinking. On the other side was the dangerous woman emerging from those files. The one who had quietly decided the fates of countless people around her, wielding their deepest secrets as instruments to reshape her daughter's environment into something she considered safe. These two images did not simply coexist, they overlapped and intertwined, making it impossible for Shanice to distinguish where unconditional love ended and where the moves of a long-term strategy began. The sensation of freefall she felt came not only from discovering that her mother had a secret life, but also from being forced to re-examine herself. She had to look back at the times she felt guilty for judging someone too harshly, at the moments she convinced herself that she had been overly sensitive or unfair, while in reality those people had been pushed into a corner no one else could see. Revisiting every conflict that had ever revolved around her, Shanice understood she had never been just a victim or a bystander. She had always been the center of a circle of action her mother had drawn, the fixed point around which every decision was made. Love, in her mother's hands, had become a blade so sharp it cut into the very person it was meant to protect, because it robbed Shanice of the ability to trust anything in a simple, straightforward way again. This story did not merely awaken a new kind of fear, the fear that the person closest to you may be capable of deeds far beyond your imagination. It also planted a chilling question in Shanice's mind, echoing endlessly like a voice in a cavern: if her mother could do all of this in the name of love, in the name of protecting her child from harm, then how much of a boundary remained between protection and destruction? In that moment, Shanice realized that absolute sacrifice can also wear the face of ruthless control, and that goodness taken to an extreme can become a storm that wipes out everything that does not fit the safety standards a mother has silently set. That fragile line had always been there, she had simply never seen it. Now that all the curtains had been pulled back, she was forced to confront a terrifying possibility. That the woman who had sheltered her all her life was also the one who had turned Fairmont Crest into a chessboard where anyone stepping into her daughter's orbit could be removed, so long as their path threatened the peace she had vowed to preserve. And once Shanice knew the truth, she could no longer return to being the innocent child under someone else's protection. She had to answer the dreadful question for herself. Can love like this still be called love, or has it already become a form of destruction disguised as sacrifice?